bigot, and someone who was racially divided, someone who wanted to oppress and suppress my people. So I took that moment as a moment of education. And in this industry that I acquired this contract with, they use different color pencils to determine their classification of work. And so if they're working on a specific project and it has something to do with plumbing, they'll use blue colors, and HVAC red colors, and you know, they have colors for everything. And so I walked over to a cabinet and I opened up a box of pencils, and they were all array of colors, right? And I took out all of the nice colors and I left 4 colors on the counter. And I said, come on over here. He's talking to me, and I'm ignoring him because now I'm getting ready to teach you something about the word color. There are 4 colors on the table. And I said, give me this color. What color is that? He says, that's a brown color. I said, brown, wow, put it up to my skin. That's nice. Oh, I like that. It's a nice color. And I put it in the box. I said, what color is that? He said, I don't know, that's kind of flesh colored. So then I took the flesh color and I kind of put it to his skin. Kind of, sort of, maybe not. I don't know. It's a nice color though, huh? And I said, what color is that? He said, that's black. Black, huh? Wow. Been called that before. Even though that's really not a true representation of what I am, right? I'm talking about if we look at the palettes of colors, right? So I said, what color is that? That last color. He said, it's white. I said, what color is that? He said, it's white. I said, oh, so you're colored too. And so sometimes it's not tackling ignorance with the defense, but really tackling ignorance with education. And so now, 11 years down the road, I still have that contract. And I tell him all the time, guess what? I'm using our story again. He said, Miss Lynn, I'm going to have to start charging you royalties. And I said, but aren't you glad that we cleared the air between each other? He says, you know what that helped me do? That helped me respect you as a person instead of identifying you for the context of your skin. And so the NAACP, when people begin to look at really our vision, our mission, I'm going to ask Zach Harris. And if he would help me just pass around a little bit of information to you about your NAACP. So the NAACP basically formed together, and our goal really was to be grassroots civil rights activists, to take partnership with individuals and organizations across this country to embrace and support the mission of the NAACP. And if you're reading there, for those of you that do have the handout, you'll see that the mission of the NAACP is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and to ensure the health and well-being of all persons. There are a few things today that I want to visit with you about, and I have to tell you, I'm going to detour a little bit from my agenda. When I spoke to Mr. Poole, my first thought was to speak on the minority and the minority vote in South Dakota government. And I want to just talk a little bit about that, but that is not the heart of really my talk today. But I do want to talk a little bit about that, because in 2016, I learned that black voters in the presidential election declined for the first time in 20 years. Decline. I'll read that again. In 2016, and this is according to the NAACP and our statistics, black voters in the presidential election declined for the first time in 20 years, and our numbers dropped in midterms. It looks like here, according to their statistics, additionally, 43% of 18 to 26-year-olds voted in 2016, compared to 71% of those 65 and older. We're not getting to the polls, right? The flip side of that, and I worked with Micah Saba here a little bit with his campaign in District 9, and one of the challenges that he imposed also was that we can't get millennials to the vote. It's a challenge. And so the NAACP has worked together because it looks like 59% of the vote are from Generation Xers, millennials and post-millennials. And so we have worked together extensively to get the youth to, one, register to vote, two, to understand the issues at large, because a lot of millennials, they don't understand what the initiatives are. We learned that they barely understand who the candidates are that are running. And so being able to provide platforms in our community that connect them. One of the boards that I serve on is a board called Conscious Youth Solutions. And one of the initiatives that I would like to begin spearheading with that organization is really a door, because they work solely with millennials, a door to really educate millennials about politics, right? Because why? If I don't see a representation of me, more than likely I'm not going to partner with it. And so it's getting millennials engaged and getting them activated throughout the community where they can, one, be registered, and two, where their vote is making a difference in South Dakota government. But when I look at that statistic and I look at that number and it says 59% of them are voting, but yet we had 28% decline at the polls. And so I would like to work extensively with the Democratic Committee, the Democratic Party, and partnering with them in terms of how we can educate our millennials, our youth, and we can get them activated within politics. So I'm going to be asking you some questions about that a little later, okay? Now we're going to talk about what I really came to talk to you about. How many of you know that there was a shooting in South Dakota? Shooting this past week in our community. Okay? For many of you that don't know, on Tuesday, May 21st, there were a series of incidents that took place right here in our community that impacted African-American male, 44 years old, to actually be shot by a white deputy, okay? This happened in the afternoon on the 21st of May, and by 5 p.m., I must have received at least 160 calls. And so that told me that there was unrest in my community. From the calls that I received, that told me that there was an uprising brewing. And so immediately I thought, Lynn, for the last year you have built relationships throughout the state of South Dakota, because the NAACP initiatives that I do, they impact our entire state. Okay, so it's not just Sioux Falls. It impacts the entire state of South Dakota. And so a lot of times I'm going out even into rural communities, some farming communities, and talking to people, okay? And so when I began to look at this event, this series of events, I began to study it, and I instantly said, well, this is something that we need to respond to, because now this is my backyard. And I don't want my community to be labeled for something that they are not. This is not Ferguson. We are not New Orleans. We are not Boston. We're Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Does that mean we don't have a problem with racism? I never said that. Does that mean we have work to do? Absolutely. And so that evening, I got on the phone with a few people in power and in position, and I said, you got to help me understand this. I need to know really what's going on because now I'm getting ready to get on the phone with National. And so I was able to get information that sometimes the citizens are not privy to. And so in reviewing that information, I instantly got on the phone and I texted one of the police officers at the Sioux Falls Police Department, and I said, I need for you to organize a meeting for us so that we can sit and visit. Before that meeting was scheduled, I'm grateful to Mike Saba because he also organized a meeting for me to meet with Jeff Barth, the county commissioner. So I had a good sit down with him and I talked to him about the NAACP's initiatives and how I was really distraught. Regardless of now what we find out in the media about the person that we would call the victim or the assailant, I was distraught in my heart because there was a racial divide now that was beginning to form in my community. And it had nothing to do with the fact that, he had issues and he seemed to be erratic and he seemed to be hostile. It was, why have we not talked about this before it happened? And it's odd because I sat with the police department a year ago and I said, you know, this hasn't happened in South Dakota, but it will if we don't address it. And sure enough, it did. So after that meeting with Jeff Barth, instantly that afternoon, I received 4 phone calls from Mike Milstead. And Mike and I said, hey, let's talk. And so the next day, I met with the Highway Patrol. And in that meeting, I also met with the Sioux Falls Police Department. And I also met with the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Department. I had community leaders there. And we sat and we talked about the shooting. And they made information privy to me, and I was thankful for that. So from that discussion, we were able to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And nobody likes to talk about the bad and the ugly, right? And I had to talk to them really about waking up every day privileged. And that was a hard talk. And I said, I sit in a congregation, and our pastor got up one day, and the sermon that day was, white people shut up and sit down. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to lose half the conference this Sunday. And he had talked to me about this sermon that he wanted to speak about 3 weeks before he even conducted the sermon. And I'm sitting in his office, and I said, wow, Pastor Keith, why do you want to do this? Of all the things we could talk about on a Sunday morning when people come together to give praises to God, why do we got to talk about color? And he says, because I have a passion for a multi-generational, multicultural edifice where people can come in together with one voice and worship one God. And he says, and I'm losing people. He says, but it's because they're privileged. And I said, yeah, you're right. So I thought a little bit about that conversation I had with him yesterday. As I sat in that meeting with all of the law enforcement and the community leaders. And I said to the police officers, I said, you're privileged. It's just context. I figured if it worked for him and God, it could work for me. And the police officer says, well, I don't understand it. What do you mean? I said, you wake up every day and you're white. You're the majority. So you never had anyone come and look at you differently for anything you've done in life. You've never had anyone prejudge you simply because of the color of your skin. You never had anyone judge you. Maybe because, you might use a few words that are not culturally, English driven. You might have a little Ebonics over here. You might throw in a little ain'ts instead of isn't, right? You never had anyone put you in a box and isolate you and say that you're not good enough. And so I said, every day you put on that uniform, not only you're privileged, now you have authority and you're privileged. And so you don't understand the defenses that African Americans or people of color, that they have to what I would call shift into to fit in. So one of the police officers uses this as an illustration. He says to me, well, I was at a job fair. And he goes, my job really is to recruit more people of color. But I go to a job fair and they won't even talk to me. And I said, probably because there's no representation. But I get it. You're trying to fix that problem. Right? So now I'm trying to bridge him with other places, whether it's a Minneapolis or whether, like in our community, we have a black highway patrolman. He was in that meeting as well. And I said, or you can consult with him to help with some of your recruitment efforts, right? And so they went, wow, that's a wonderful idea. We never thought that we could tap into other law enforcement resources. Well, if you don't have African American or Latino or Asian representatives on the force, certainly you have resources that you can reach out to, right, to connect with, to actually add to your hiring process. So then I said, let me talk to you about the hiring process, because I sat down at the table with Paul Tanakin and talked to him even about the city. And I said, where's the representation of our community? And they said, oh my God, no you didn't. You're like a viper. They said, he sat in that chair and he didn't even know how to respond to you. But he says, we open those jobs up to people, but they don't apply. I said, why is it they don't apply? Or is it that they do apply, but somewhere in the process, they screen them? See? And then when you screen them, you say, oh, well, not qualified. Let me give it to this person over here. So we got to stop telling half-truths and dig up the facts and deal with them so that we can progress, right? So I said to the officer, I said, tell me about your job fair incident. He says, so I walk up to this guy. He's in his 30s. He's an African-American guy with his nephew. His nephew's about 12. And I said hi to him about 4 times, and he ignored me. What else happened? He goes, so finally I got kind of pissed off. He says, I wasn't dressed in my uniform. I had my dress downs on, you know. I still had my gun and my handcuffs, but I was dressed down. I was trying to really be his friend because we need some African Americans on the force. So I said, so what happened next? He says, and all of a sudden, I just said, hey, man, I'm trying to be nice to you here. And when somebody extends their hand to you to say, hey, this is who I am, you're supposed to, I said, I'm going to stop you right there. Because the way you responded was wrong. It wasn't culturally sensitive. Again, it goes back to being privileged. I said, you have to understand, first of all, you're talking to a black male. And if you look at our history with the police department, I'm 51. So 50 years ago, in MLK's time, there was still police brutality, even though African Americans were considered to what? Be what? Citizens in America. And I know this because my mother was a Black Panther. And so I saw Washington transformed because of a racial divide. I saw black people fight for their liberties, fight for the freedom to have the same things that the majority had. And I saw the resistance and the hatred. And so I said to him, I said, you have to understand, he's a black man, and instantly he's on the defense. And then you don't make the climate any better because now you're a man in authority with your badge on and your gun and your handcuffs. And instead of you just calmly saying, I'm sorry, my name is Cal. Maybe I came off too strong. I just want to introduce myself to you, right? Instead, what you did was you usurped your authority. You took it a little too far. And so let me teach you now about being culturally sensitive. He says, well, I don't get it because his nephew was okay with me. He talked to me. I said, he was 12, right? He said, yeah. I said, give him a few more years and let's see how he responds to you. It's going to be different. Why? Because now he has come into confrontation after confrontation. He has seen it in the media, confrontations with what? Blacks and people in law enforcement. And so somehow we have to change the message. And so I was so happy when I sat there at that meeting and I had the police department and the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Department and the Highway Patrol say, we will look at cultural sensitivity and cultural messaging. I said, there are some citizens based off of this shooting that feel like the information is not being disseminated quick enough. Let's talk about the media and how the media disseminates information to the general public. And how the media sometimes can put their spin on it because they're in it for ratings, right? Who can get to the story fastest? Whether the facts are there or not, we're going to report on it. How often have you seen the media get in the news and they'll talk about something and then you'll have an expert sitting there and they'll give their opinion, right? And then you'll leave the news and somebody will say you'll leave from that table, you'll leave from the television, and you'll go out in the community and somebody say, well, I heard them say. The opinion now is formed. So we began to look at their media protocol. When an incident happens in our community, how is that information now exchanged to the outlets of media? And then what policies do you have in place for them to follow the protocol so that what they are articulating to the citizens, that it is culturally sound? So it caused them now to look at their media policy, to talk to their legal department, to re-educate. I said, you know, when I started a job years ago, right, I go in, they give me a handbook, I read the policies and procedures, I sign it. How often do I go back and I read those policies? We might sit in a meeting and somebody might say something, they go, oh yeah, that's in our handbook. But if I don't utilize it every day, I forget it, right? So I said to them, great, that's wonderful. You have a policy in place, but guess what? Those media outlets are changing on a continuum. You have people leaving, you have people retiring, you have interns coming in, you have new people all the time. What record are you using to make sure that everyone... Welcome. I'm sorry, everyone. This is my mother. Hi. But my question was, what policies, what procedures do you have to ensure that those people that are working and exchanging that information to the citizens in our city, right? Because someone may not know that the NAACP is behind the scenes working intrinsically with the law enforcement, right? But they will definitely view the videotape, right, of the incident. They'll definitely share the videotape of the incident, and they'll definitely talk about it in their circles. And so I said, what can we do to better educate those in the media chains? We began to talk about the initiatives that needed to take place. And guess what? All three entities agreed. We will look at our media policy. And where it's not culturally sound or culturally sensitive, we will change it. Right. Then they said, this is what really got me hyped. We want the NAACP to be a catalyst with us while we make these changes. I said, that's awesome because we have a whole legal department with over 500,000 volunteers throughout the country. We have a whole legal department that can handle all of that. So then I said, now let's talk about the shooting. Oh boy, then it got hot, right? Because my question about the shooting, even though the Argus leader did a very good job about explaining some details. How many of you seen the story today in the news? The Argus leader.
Argus leader.
Have you read it? All right, I'm going to read it for you. Now, when I read this to you, don't forget all the other things I said previously. The suspect is an officer involved in the officer-involved shooting in front of the Minnehaha County Jail on Tuesday has been placed in custody. Jail officials confirmed Friday. George Lee Renzi, Jr., 44, was arrested Thursday on multiple charges, including felony and aggravated assault of an officer. From Tuesday to Friday, he was placed in a Sioux Falls hospital and treated after being shot once in the abdomen. Okay? According to an affidavit filed in the case, Renzi ran toward two officers while holding two knives, one in each hand. He refusing officers' orders to drop them. He then allegedly ran toward Deputy Craig Olson, okay, with the knives drawn in the fighting manner per court documents. Olson fired 2 rounds at Renzi, striking him once according to the affidavit. Now we're going to get into Mr. Renzi's past. Renzi is a registered sex offender who was convicted in Iowa in 1993 of assault with intent to commit sexual abuse against a 12-year-old girl. A South Dakota criminal background search shows that he has a history of drug-related convictions and a protection order for domestic abuse. Renzi was charged earlier this week with 4 counts of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, a Class 2 felony, 2 counts of simple assault on a law enforcement officer, a Class 6 felony, intentional damage to public property, a Class 1 misdemeanor, and disorderly conduct, a Class 2 misdemeanor. At 8:30 a.m. Friday, Renzi has no scheduled court appearances. Now I'm going to ask you a question, and it's going to get real personal. How many of you think, even though he had a shady past, okay, how many of you think that the police department was still accurate in their decision?
I didn't hear that.
How many of you think that the police department was accurate in their decision to shoot him?
Well, now, I'm going to respond to that real
Please.
quick. It wasn't the police department that
Right,
shot
you're right,
him.
I'm sorry, it was the
It was an
sheriff.
officer.
You're right. It was, I'm sorry, let me correct that, because that's one of the things that I did stress in the meeting. Thank you, Kenny. I didn't need you to tell me that, but I needed you to remind me of that. Because yesterday when we were in the meeting, let me just have some justification and clarification here. A lot of times when people see video footage like that, the first thing that they think of is when they see a person in a uniform, they begin to label them what? As police officers, right? A lot of people said, well, the police have done this. But what we learned is it was really a deputy from Minnehaha County that actually fired, okay? But a lot of times people don't understand that. The guards that you see running in the background, they're actually security county correctional officers. And the reason why they did not draw or they did not taser was because they are unarmed, okay? So that's why in the video you see them running, but they're yelling. It's because they have no type of defense mechanism to actually hinder someone if there's violence, okay? Someone says, well, why didn't they tackle them? Well, you have to understand. The video footage that you see, thank you again, the video footage that you see, before that video footage aired, there's a whole series of episodes that happened before that. There's internal, okay, inside of the facility, there actually is an unrest, okay? And according to the Sheriff's Department, they said this incident went from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds. When I saw the video that was posted in the parking lot, I said to myself, there is something wrong with him. This is just me prejudging, okay? I didn't have any of the facts, right? I looked at it, I said, what is going on here? I said, there are a series of issues here, and I just need to understand why he's so erratic, why he's so hostile. And so then I learned that there are a series of events that happen inside the facility. And so then I asked the question, did he come for help? And someone say something to him that wasn't culturally sensitive? And he flipped? I'm just asking. This is just me thinking it out loud, okay? I said, does he have a mental health issue, right? I'm just trying to filter through it. I'm trying to understand it. He seems to be really erratic. Is this influenced by drugs or alcohol? What happened? What transpired before the breaking of the glass? What got him in such a frenzy that when he came outside, that no one could calm him down, right? So I said there are a whole series of events that the media has left out. And that's what I wanted to question yesterday. That's what I wanted to get a feel for. How are you now going to respond? Because I'm getting calls and people are at unrest. And they're talking about, man, we'll picket and we'll march. But I'm like, well, a picket and a march is good, but sometimes it can turn wrong when people don't understand your message. And they show up with makeshift bombs and bats. And so I said, well, let me get in front of this then and visit with those people in power so that I can de-escalate anything from tainting the good image of my community. And so in that, I said to the police department, we have a situation here. How are we going to deal with it? And so they said, well, you know, everybody wants everything now, and we have a 30-day window. And some people at the table were saying 30 days isn't good enough. We need to know the answers now. And I said, no, we need them to do a thorough investigation. I need for every I to be dotted and every T, because guess what? The watchdog organization of the NAACP is going to get every finding. So about that time, our legal team comes in, and they say, can we have the charging documents? They gave us the charging documents. We had it, the affidavit. When the investigative report comes, they'll give us the affidavit for that, and guess what? That'll go to our legal team, and they'll piece it apart and pick it apart and make sure that everything was done accurately. I say that to say this. All right, here we go. We all have a past. Do we not?
I do.
We all have a past, right? Good, bad, indifferent, right? I don't think not one of us can say we squeaky clean. Just look back over your life and think about it, right? I tell people all the time, I don't know if I can ever run for office, because, man, if they ever pull up my stuff, woo! Yeah, plenty to talk
I don't
about.
believe it.
And so I say that to say this. At the end of the day, I had to tell the Sioux Falls Police Department, after we deliberated and debated and brainstormed and yelled and screamed and got an understanding, isn't all you're getting, you have to get an understanding. I said to them, I'm still concerned about the citizens. I'm concerned about the people, because I don't need this to recycle. So I'm telling you that the people see you as a threat. Black people see you as a threat. And in some cultures, people of other cultures see you as a threat, because in their countries, the police are militant. In their countries, the police carry M16s. They carry rifles, assault rifles. In their countries, they knock the doors down. And they take their women and they rape them. They come into their homes and take their goods. So in some cultures, they don't view the police as law-abiding people of authority that maintain order and discipline in the community. And so I'm saying you're dealing with a minority. But if you look at the numbers in our great state of South Dakota, guess what? The minorities are here. Culture is here. And so at some point, we got to remove our blinders, right? A big privilege. And understand really, where is it that the Muslim comes from? Where is it really the journey of the refugee that's here? What really is the story of the African American? Holocaust victims, tell me your journey. We have to begin to take off our own biases and really understand the path that people have walked that have made them the men and women that they are today. Right? Not everybody grew up in South Dakota. Right?
Don't forget the Native Americans.
Native Americans. I'm speaking all races. I'm not excluding anyone. Not anyone. So if I do leave someone out, just know I'm talking about all of us here, right? They say the Native Americans, that they kind of are the, well, anyway. Oh, they kind of compare them to us a little bit. So at the end of the day, I said to the police department, the highway patrol, as well as the Minnehaha County, that we want to begin to activate initiatives in our state. And so what we are doing is we are setting up cultural forums This weekend, I'm actually hitting every minority church that I can hit. It's gonna be a busy day for me. And I'm going out and I'm telling them, we're gonna do cultural forums in the city where people of the community can come and sit. We're gonna have all entities of law enforcement as well as legal representatives at these forums, and we're gonna talk about the tough stuff. Because guess what, if we don't come to the table and everyone isn't represented, the message will get muddled that we're unified. And so what I want to do is I want to break the barrier that divides us and build the bridge that unifies us. And the only way we can do that is if we have the representation there to ask the questions. And so you'll see it, Zach, he's phenomenal about getting information out. So I might even ask him to be the lead on that, to get the information out to people. But we're looking at doing evening cultural forums as well as Saturday cultural forums for people who cannot make it. The police department, they're getting back to me today with dates. But we want to do this on a continual basis in our neighborhood to talk about any issues of cultural violence that happens in our back door. And so I solicit you. You have my contact information. If you have questions, if you want to mobilize, if you want to become engaged in helping minorities feel as if they are equal, if you want to crusade along with the NAACP, because remember, it was founded on what? The principles of civil and social justice for all mankind. And so if you feel that you have that fire, that burning within you to change the way we operate, and like I told the police department, they're not doing this in other cities. They're not doing this in Baltimore. And the chief of police, he said, I'm glad that you're here, because how many people can say I have the NAACP and community leaders here and we're talking about it versus picketing or becoming angry? And I said, and whatever we come up with, they're not doing it, but we're not them. He says, I want us to be the catalyst for something different. So that tells me the heart of those that are in those positions and how they want to work intrinsically with an organization like the NAACP. I see you standing there. I don't want to be past my time, but you have my contact information. If you want to talk, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you.
I just said we definitely want to have her back.
Yes, exactly. Good
Do you want to introduce your mother a little more formally? Or?
Well, my mother and I, we're going through something today because, every birthday, my mother is usually the first person to call me. And she said, hey, good morning, little girl. Happy birthday. And yesterday I didn't get that. Right? And so I went to my meetings and I got calls and she was texting me about all kinds of other little things. And so I said, my mother forgot my birthday. And so she calls me and we're talking on the phone and she said, did you know? And oh my God. And she said, I said, Mom, what's today? She said, it's the 23rd of May. She said, your birthday's tomorrow. I said, is it? And she said, ain't it? I said, well, I told him at work that you didn't know when I was born. So I'm going to shave 10 years off. And I'm going to be 41 instead of 51. And so she says, I have to call everyone and let them know that your birthday actually is the 23rd. But guess what she did today? Called me at work and said, hey, little girl, happy birthday. This is her mom, Mary Patterson. And her falling in love with my dad was the reason I ended up in Augsburg, Germany. And man, she's paved the way. She has paved the way. She used to be a Black Panther. She's originally from Washington, D.C. And she's got a voice on her as well. So we're going to keep her quiet. Yeah, we're going to keep her quiet so she can get it moving and rolling. She retired. She worked for the State Department for how many years?
State Department, the White House, Walter Reed, Pentagon, and Germany, 6.5 years.
And now she has her business here in South Dakota. In her retiring years, she's still working. She has a cleaning business.
That's why I look like this.
Well, please come to Dem Forum. You would be welcome anytime. We'd like to have you as hopefully.
We need to have you speak sometime.
Yeah.
Danny, don't you think we ought to recognize a birthday?
Oh, yeah, sure, we'll sing happy birthday.
Let's do it. Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lynette. Happy birthday to you.
You don't work 50
I'm a grandma. I have 3 grandkids. I have 4 adult kids. My twins are 33. One son lives in New York. The other one is a doctor in Miami. I have a 25-year-old here who's relocated to Houston, Texas in July. She is the mother of my 2 first grandkids, Malaya Lillian, which is my first granddaughter, and Malik Judea, he's my second. And then I have a younger daughter who used to be a missionary in Mexico. And she lives here in Sioux Falls as well. And then my son, who's the doctor in Miami, he just had a new baby in February.
Congratulations.
And would you 2 folks over here like to introduce yourselves to us?
Oh, yeah. So I'm Zach Van Harris Jr., a student going to college for sociology, anthropology. Looking forward to grad school next year. I'd like to get into public administration. Also on the board for South Dakota's Against Racism, a coordinator for Conscious Youth Solutions, nonprofit organization for workforce development for the youth here in Sioux Falls. All Cultures Welcome is a nonprofit startup that I got going on with some fellow students. I got a lot going on. I just want to be a community builder, serve the public, and have unity in our city. I love Sioux Falls. So.
Where you go to college?
SDSU. But hey, grad school, I'm a free agent for grad school. If you got some scholarships, apprenticeship, assistantship, hey, holla at me.
My name is Serene Reinholtz. I'm 28, pretty new to any type of forum scene. I'm one of those, in all honesty, one of the millennials that hasn't been making it to the polls, and I'm looking to change that for myself, and I'm looking to bring other people with me. So.
And she's also on the board for South Dakotans Against
Racism.
Awesome.
Okay. We have one more new person over here. I'll make sure we get in. Oh, he doesn't.
Roger.
Roger.
I'm Roger Hedrick. I'm a former, I live in Flanders. I'm a former colleague of Jim Stanton's.
We taught together in Laverne, Minnesota.
Yeah. And Ben Vanacoy has been a longtime friend.
Really sharp back.
Yeah, you've all heard me preaching about getting more involved with minorities and people of diversity, and this is a good example. I mean, this is a thing that we need to support, and we have to show our support. We're not as directly involved as the folks as Lynn and Zach and the other folks that spoke, but please, let's be involved. One of the things we can do is there are all kinds of videotapes of what happened, not just what we've seen. They're being held by the Attorney General right now, but we have the right to see those at some point. That's public information. That was tax dollars that paid for those videos. And that might give us a more direct message of what really happened. So please, let's support these kinds of things when it's not just having minorities come to our meetings, it's what are their issues and how can we support them.
And Michael, I'd just like to add on to that about the video footage. I did ask about that, and they are willing to release that footage, but you have to understand, in an investigation, right, you have to be careful what is shared out there, right? And so we want to be respectful to our law enforcement officers for their investigation and what they're handling. And then I think that once that investigation has concluded, you'll start to see more of that footage available. But right now, we don't want to put anything out there. They don't want to put anything out there that would compromise their case, rightfully so. So we want to respect that.
And we need you to be a member of the Democratic Forum.
My blood is a little red, I'll tell you. And Michael's getting on me about that. And I won't say that I won't consider it. I have some reservations.
You heard her. You heard her, Bob.
Democrat, she gonna do it.
Well, remember, I was kind of naughty in my past.
Don't forget Wednesday. I'd really like to see you at the Aberesk thing. Next week will be veterans. If you have a friend who might be a veteran and who would be willing to share some comments or questions, why don't you invite them to Democratic Forum next Friday.
Okay, we got some sunshine out there, get out there and enjoy it while you can, and see you all next week.
If you have not signed the petitions to put initiatives on the 2020 ballot, please
Oh
see
yeah,
me.
everyone should be signing.
Yeah, I see some new faces that may not have done it yet.